Work is changing. The question is, are you? Welcome to 99 Problems But Work Ain't One, the new podcast series from How Now that will help you prepare for the fast-changing world of work. I'm your host, Nelson Sivalingam, and I'll be talking to disruptive startups, contrarian thinkers, global leaders, and real game changers, and asking them the burning questions about the challenges we face at work. From scaling cultures and adopting technology to improving well-being and building fast-learning organizations that are prepared for the future of work, we get the insights, tactics, and actionable nuggets of knowledge to put to work. What makes a learning mindset? And just how crucial is mindset in driving culture, habits, and the actions your people take? This week, we're joined by Toby Newman, L&D Manager at Hair Technologies, to answer those questions and plenty more. This is a conversation that took us everywhere, from dealing with impostor syndrome to democratizing learning so that everyone's empowered to share freely. Toby also explained how creating a team charter can literally help everyone get on the same page. We discussed whether socializing with your colleagues is a good thing and talked about being your true self at work. So here are the answers to all those fascinating questions with Toby Newman. Toby, welcome to the show.
My pleasure for being here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we've been meaning to have one of these long conversations about all these amazing concepts in learning, development, performance for a long time. So I'm glad we finally got the chance to do this.
Yeah, no, obviously we've had lots of meetings with other people, but it's like kind of just getting time for ourselves.
Yeah, this is it. So what we wanted to kind of dive into today, Toby, was a few kind of, I guess, notions that are sometimes considered by leaders, managers, and organizations as almost fluffy topics, but actually they're so integral to kind of driving change. And what I'm talking about is things like mindset change, learning culture, and topics like this that sometimes are harder to sell in to leadership team or to the business. So to start off with, tell me in from your perspective, why start with mindset? Why is it so important to start with mindset or mindset change?
Well, mindset is kind of drives everything about you as an individual. There's a definition that's the mindset.com, as you would imagine. And I'll quote it here just so everybody. So mindsets are the collection of beliefs and thoughts that make up a mental attitude, inclination, habit, or disposition that predetermines a person interpersonal and responses to events, circumstances, and situations. So that's a hell of a definition. But basically, the thing for me, the big bit is the habits. Now, you know as well as I do that habits are what drive us either kind of the right way or the wrong way.
Yeah.
And if I really kind of basic down, I can't even think of the word in the morning, to reduce it down. There you go. That's a better word. To what it actually means. A culture or a mindset is about setting the right beliefs in terms of what you individually as a company believe in. I can imagine Simon Sinek in terms of the work he does and his just cause that he introduced in his books. So that's the kind of your beliefs. So what are we actually believing? Vision is one thing, but belief, I think, is more important. But then it's the habits that you do individually that set up the tone of how you then become how you drive your mindset. And then it ultimately becomes a culture. I'm a big believer that there is actually no such thing as culture, as company culture. It is mindsets of individuals and teams that then come together that then just so happen to create this. It's almost like, like a flock of seagulls, a culture of mindsets.
Yeah.
If you kind of put it that way.
Yeah.
So I don't like when companies say we're going to start with we want to drive this culture or that culture, because like you said, it's fluffy. It doesn't actually mean anything. What they should be doing is saying, well, what individuals and managers and teams and leaders can we drive? And then that will then become a culture.
And so why do you think it's such a challenge in so many organizations to kind of pitch the idea of addressing the mindset first or changing the mindset?
Because nobody's really kind of put it down into practical senses. At least my feeling is that people, they'll send out comms and they'll send out, lovely exercises or lovely videos, and it will kind of go, yep, this is what we want, and they'll see the odds change in behaviour of a certain team or a certain individual, and then go, look, see, we've got a culture. And like, yeah, no, it doesn't work like that. So I think it's the time. People don't want to invest the time that it takes to change a habit. I mean, there are a lot cleverer people out me that talk about habits, and I can't remember her first name, but Duckworth, that did the Grit book,
Right.
that talks about the amount of effort that goes in to change habits and then become that winning mentality. I can't remember who said it, but I read somewhere that it was 10,000 hours worth of work to get to a point where you're excellent at something.
Yeah.
10,000 hours is a big habit. You need to be constantly at this thing. So I think companies they've got the right idea, but they haven't broken it down into what does this actually mean to individuals, into teams, and then how do we actually go about physically doing this over an extended period of time.
Yeah. And taking mindset and almost kind of parking it for a second, and I'll bring it back to what we're going to talk about. But what do you think is obviously working in learning and development? I don't know whether that's what you call it at your organization. Let's start with, why do you think it exists in the first place? And then we can kind of go back to what the mindset is, what
learning and development, why that exists.
Why do you think it exists, and what do you think the purpose of it is?
Now that is that's a fundamental question for an early morning podcast, I'll tell you. But I love it. So what it would mean to what is learning? I think at its core, it's got to be helping others. It's got to be. I mean, you talk to teachers and you ask them why do they want to be a teacher? Not one of them would say because I want the salary or because I want to be a head teacher. They do it because they want to give back. They want an underlying feeling that they need to support others. Just like health service, all those kind of amazing people. I am not saying that we're anywhere near to the NHS and to those kind of people, because they are like far and beyond anything I can do. But in my little way, it's something to give back. I mean, I suppose it's a selfish thing as well, because I get joy out of helping others. People get joy out of different things. About, like, if I take my wife, she gets joy out of doing a really good Excel sheet. Sounds strange. Obviously, there's other things, but that's one thing that she loves to do. But I get joy from passing on my knowledge and seeing them not just improve, but then seeing them spread that word to others. So I think for me, a learning and development team, or a learning team, or training team, or whatever you want to call it, there needs to be an element in any company that drives the company or drives individuals to be better than they are. Managers do it to an extent, but if I'm being honest, managers do it because they want to hit their targets, or because they have to hit their targets. It's not an external thing, it's an internal thing. Now, I'm probably poo-pooing a lot of managers out there and going, no, I love to do this. But yeah, on the whole, that's my feeling. And I feel that learning and development, and I'm not including HR in this. Don't get me started on the HR learning bit. That's a whole big mess for me. But learning itself is the drive to make you not just better, but to share that with others as well.
And so now, coming back to the mindset piece, what mindset do you think is required to effectively deliver learning and development within a company?
You mean as in, for me, like my own mindset?
Well, I mean, starting as an individual, but also collectively as an organization, what mindset do you need to be able to deliver L&D? So going back to the idea of the kind of beliefs and principles that you need to have in place, what needs to be there?
So, I mean, I'm going to go back to that Just Cause, because I'm reading his Infinite Mindset book, and it's really hitting home almost every page. It's like, oh my God. So I'm going to use Simon's kind of theory as well, is that Just Cause. I think that's got to be the start, that you've got to be able to, not just as a learning team, but as a company or individuals, even if it's just your manager's Just Cause within the company, is that you've got to have that bit right. You've got to have a kind of something that you go, yes, I can believe in this and I want to drive to it. The next step down, I think, would be the psychological safety. And yes, that can be trained out, but it's a wider piece than that. For those who are not sure what psychological safety is, it's basically that you can bring your true self to a team and not be shouted down, not be kind of disrespected, and trusting environment. And there's loads of work on it. So if you're not sure, look it up. But psychological safety is like your foundation, put it that way. Then in terms of the actual mindset, for me, it starts with self-awareness. There are many other things that go into it, because a lot of people talk about growth mindset. They talk about an innovation mindset. For me, growth mindset is a great starting point, because it does talk about positivity. It talks about self-awareness. And those things are great. But you need to practice them. You can't just say, I'm self-aware, look at, like I am, therefore, I think, therefore I am.
Yeah.
There are brilliant exercises, and it takes, again, go back to that 10,000 hours. It takes practice. It takes discipline in a weird kind of way to be able to do it. I'm nowhere near, brilliant at it, but mindfulness and self-awareness are such key elements of it. For me, where growth mindset stops and where learning mindset takes on is the sharing bit. Is that growth mindset is always an individual thing. I am going to grow as an individual, and others benefit from that, but indirectly. A learning mindset says that you are part of a wider ecosystem, and that you need to share amongst each other to be able to grow. And I think, you and I would probably agree that, if you learn something but then talk about it, you're more likely to remember it, you're more likely to embed it, etc., etc., etc. And obviously, that, what goes around comes around. If you're more sharing, then others are more sharing with you, etc., etc. And for me, then that drives innovation. It's not, a lot of people go, oh, you've got to have an innovation mindset. But for me, it's, I know you have a learning mindset, and then that drives innovation. I was talking with my developer colleagues a while ago, and obviously you being a developer yourself, is that a lot of developers say they have a learning mindset, because I use the term keeping ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
So for those that aren't aware, you've got Moore's law, which is the exponential growth of transistors in computers. And that's kind of like, it shows the power of computing. But what I use it for is that it demonstrates the speed of technology. And that if you're not keeping ahead of that curve, or at least keeping up with it, then you might as well forget it. And you know this better than others. If you're lacking in your developer skills, you're out of a job, let alone anything else.
Yeah.
So you've got to keep yourself motivated to learn what's coming up, learn, improve, etc., etc. But and I'll ask you this: when was the last? Maybe this is a bit weird, because obviously you do this podcast and stuff. But when was the last time you shared anything that you've been doing in your own work? Can you think of a time when you've consciously shared it?
Yeah, so I would probably say, Toby, I do it a fair bit, right? Either on,
I'd hope so.
I was going to say, whether it's sharing what we learn internally as an organization on networks like LinkedIn, or sharing it internally on our own How Now platform. But I think the idea of, I'm a big believer of kind of learning in public. Right. So, showing the mistakes we're making and the lessons from it, which kind of holds you accountable.
Yeah. I don't think many or as many developers have that mindset, obviously, because you're in the industry you're in.
Sure.
It benefits you to do that. But most developers, at least I feel, that they get up to the point of they've got the growth mindset, but they don't have a learning mindset, and that sharing is the key.
And so I just want to, there's so much there to unpack, Toby. So I want to maybe before I break down the different behaviors or kind of characteristics of a learning mindset, let's start from visualizing an organization, someone who's listening to this now, they're trying to figure out, well, before I figure out how to develop a learning mindset, I need to know what kind of mindset do we currently have in the company. Maybe we already have a learning mindset. So how would I know as an organization whether I have, what are the things I can look out for that give me, that are indicative of whether I have a learning mindset or not at this organization?
Well, I think the easiest one is the sharing bit, because if a team's got, or if a company's got something like a Yammer or a Slack or a MS Teams or any of those kind of social platforms, internal social platforms, a very quick report on the amount of content being shared on that, not official comms and not official, welcome to this person or that, but the sharing, like I learned this and I saw this document. Would anybody else benefit from it? You can run relatively easy reports on that, or at least kind of do a week-long experiment to see what groups are active. And that will give you a pretty damn good understanding of what kind of mindset you've got. Innovation would be, as a result, to see, how innovative teams are. And even, I don't like to do surveys, but if you can get a good understanding from your middle management, how many brainstorming sessions there are, what is the feeling of people that they feel they're safe to and able to give their own feedback and talk about discussions, not just objectives, but talk around, discuss things. That would be a good indicator.
And so I love the idea of, obviously, like the idea of sharing what you're learning. And I think we often talk about the idea of compound learning, right? You're not just learning from what you're learning, but you're also learning from what others are learning. And that's what almost helps you keep up with the pace of change is kind of collective learning and building.
We can't do it on our own. I mean, I've said for a while now that I don't consider myself a trainer, and I think training should be dropped from because we're not trainers anymore. We have to let go of that and be much more like facilitators, is getting other people to share their knowledge with us and with their wider people. That is how you make the company stay competitive and improve, not by somebody like me with an ego going, right, everybody train this, train that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's almost like that coach you need across the organization who can go and coach people to have this mindset and almost take the actions to be able to really manifest this mindset. But let's come back to, let's just take sharing, right? Sharing what you're learning. As how can I drive that behavior in my organization? What are the practical ways for me to enable people to share knowledge and share learning? And what have you commonly found kind of hurdles? When you've tried to implement this in organizations where you've worked, what are the kind of pushbacks and challenges that you face?
So there's two big things. I mean, let's kind of speak absolute basic terms. Having a good platform is, individuals can share, like you said, you can do on LinkedIn. They can, talk to their colleagues if you're in an office. That's one thing. But to really scale it, you need to have a good, solid foundation of a platform. And that could be something as simple as Yammer, Slack. I'll talk about some other platforms that I like in a second. But it's not just to have the platform, but to deliver it in a way that people understand the benefits of using it. Not just, hey, everybody, we've got Yammer, now off you go. And you're like, oh, okay, I'll wait for people to talk to me. You've got to, set objectives. You've got to drive the engagement in a platform, not just assume people will use it. if you build it, they will not come.
Yeah.
As the film didn't quite say. So the foundation is the platform. Then it's the individuals, managers. For me, at least, if I'm thinking personally, it's realizing that you have something to actually share. I use the term imposter syndrome. I suffer from it a lot.
Yeah.
I'm kind of, it's something every day I kind of go, shall I share this? Shall I share this? Because it's that little devil on my shoulder. But addressing that and talking about it. I mean, we had a really great external speaker come into our company and talk about how you can get over the imposter syndrome. So how to give value back to the individual. We also do talks about wellness, about mental health, obviously being an important one, but also about curiosity, about how to actually be curious. And it's all those little kind of, I wouldn't even call them skills, but those kind of mindsets, to be a thing of a better word, that if you as an individual have those, then you want to share. Right. Then it's a case of controlling. It sounds a weird word, but channeling it, that's a better word. I would much rather be in a position where as a leader or as a manager that I'm having to channel people's enthusiasm rather than get it out of them in the first place.
And just on that, Toby, like probably another mindset change, but we often, we've heard some companies ask us about, I'm a bit worried about everyone being able to share knowledge. Am I able to?
Oh, yeah, we have the same.
Right, like, can I approve this? And we often find, it defeats the purpose. If you've got 100,000 people in your company, if you've got 100,000 people sharing knowledge every day, and that's exactly what you want them to do, you're going to need a much, much bigger team, and it's still not going to be possible. So, how do you get around that? How do you address that?
It's the democratization of learning, isn't it? That's the holy grail, is that you want people to be able to share freely. To use an example from my own company, is that we brought in a company called K-Point. They're a brilliant video platform company, and their premise is democratization of sharing of learning. So that the idea is that anybody can create a video, and then it just gets up on the internal share, and then you can search for it, and you can and I thought, this is brilliant. But then a lot of individuals and a lot of managers are like, well, we need to verify that is the right information. We need to control it in a way. And I think we've had this discussion before about that control. I think I actually raised this with you before in a previous conversation, and I liked your response. It went basically something along the lines of the social platform will be your control. If people don't like it, they'll downvote it or they won't watch it. If it's a problem, people will flag it straight away. And as long as you've got that process internally to say that's a flag, quick, automatically take it down. So you're always going to get people that kind of sway the thinking. But as we all know, you can't let individuals with a bad thoughts sway the good intentions of the general population.
It almost reminds me, I remember when I my last proper job, or a very long time ago, and where it was a company where you couldn't, unless you worked in the digital marketing team, you weren't allowed access to any of the social media sites or YouTube for that. I mean, it's very early days, and I really hope companies are not doing that today. But it was this idea of, again, it does come back to fundamentally trust, right? When you're asking the question of, can I moderate or approve what is putting out there, you're essentially questioning the trust, that kind of social contract you have in your organization of are you basically saying you don't trust me and therefore you need to verify and approve?
It's one thing to go externally. It's one thing to say, like, I'm going to talk on behalf of company X, company Y, and, this is what we want to do and stuff. And you think, okay, I can sort of understand that there is comms going, hold on a minute. Yeah, you need to have training, or it needs to be official, kind of wording or whatever. But internally, when it's your own colleagues and your own people, that they're happy for you to have a meeting with whoever you want, and you say whatever you want, But if you put it on, in a Word document, or if you put it in an email, they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's like, well, hang on a minute, what's the difference? So yeah, and it is a trusting. You have to let go. And going back to that, keeping ahead of the curve, is I'd almost guarantee if you can't let go, then say goodbye to your competitive edge, because sooner or later you're going to suffer.
Just before going on to the next point on kind of sharing, just to touch on what you mentioned around kind of the imposter syndrome. And I think what I've found is I've definitely suffered from it. And from the conversations I've had, it's so common, actually. People on maybe the kind of spectrum of how much it kind of holds you back from doing what you're doing. But and we've discussed this a lot at How Now with the guys in the team around, you're an expert if you know more about something than someone else. And there's always going to be an audience out there where you know more than them about a particular topic. So it's not about whether you know the most about this topic.
No,
it's relatively speaking.
It's not a professor.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's one of the ways we've discussed it. But I'd really love to dive into, any other ways you've tackled it, both as an individual, but collectively as an organization, because we come across it a lot. And I imagine it's holding back a lot of people.
Oh, it is. I mean, and me included. So the two things you can do, and that we've tried to do, is talk about it and reiterate it. So talk about it in terms of, talk about the word, just like with mental health. Same kind of talk about it. Talk about, kind of if you suffer from it. Talk about how it makes you feel. When you kind of thinking, do I hit send, or do I put my hand up in a crowded room, all that kind of stuff. So it's almost a kind of counseling, kind of, or basic versions of counseling. But with imposter syndrome, is that you as an individual need to be aware, and this goes all the way back to that self-awareness. You need to recognize it. Okay, I have imposter syndrome. I use the term conscious a lot. I need to be conscious that I'm doing things. Because if you're not conscious about it, you can't change them. You've got to be conscious, and then you can change something that's unconscious. So talk about it. Think to yourself. Take self-awareness classes. Talk to your peers. Maybe talk to your manager. Talk to your friends and family. Why? What expertise do I have? Maybe you go down the positive road rather than, why can't I do it? Think, well, what do I have? And managers can do that as well. They can highlight the positives of people to say, you're great at this, you're great at that, you're great at this, you're great at that. Do you know what? If you share what you just told me with that other person, they'd love that.
Yeah.
And so it's the encouragement of your individual, that positivity to say, you've got a voice here. You should say it, and maybe even work with them. Maybe even kind of go, well, let me be your pseudo, maybe your ghostwriter, and let me help you write it for you, or create a video for you, and then encourage others to like and share it and all that kind of stuff. So it needs to be, again, going back to that psychological safety. It needs to be such a tight, well-run, well-trusted environment to really kind of kickstart that kind of kick in the butt of imposter syndrome.
Let's dive into that a bit more, Toby, this idea of kind of psychological safety. And I think, again, there is more kind of collective awareness about this, I feel like, now than there was, 5 years ago. And we're talking about more ways of acknowledging it, and how do we kind of nurture a psychologically safe workplace. And what are the practical ways of actually creating psychological safety?
I know I'm going to keep on repeating myself for a lot of these things, but it goes back to that self-awareness. So that they say you've got to be able to bring your true self into it, but you've got to know your true self to be able to bring it in. And some people maybe have spent years and years and years with that kind of professional office kind of jacket on, and like, this is me, and it's like, well, it's not really you. And so things like getting to know your family more. So bringing your colleagues into your work environment. I think you'd agree with me that one of the benefits of this pandemic, obviously there is a lot of downsides, but one of the benefits is that people are brought in to your environment. So now I can see you're at home and you've got a great picture. Is that your wife?
Yeah, my partner. Yeah.
It's a lovely picture. But yeah, so I can get an understanding of your background to see kind of what drives him and all that kind of stuff. I was talking with a manager, and they said that before the lockdowns, when they were working at home, they would kick their kids out of the room.
Right.
And like, it doesn't matter what meeting was, they would kick them out. Now they actively bring them in, sit, and I do the same. Doesn't matter what meeting I'm in, I'll sit my little one on my, and she were like, "Oh, work," and go, "Oh, hello," and all those kind of things. But it's little things like that that break down the barriers, so that you can become more of your. This is me, whether you like it or not. This is me. And then once you're more comfortable about that, then I think the psychological safety starts to improve. One practical element that I would highly recommend everybody do is to create a team charter or a team canvas. You can look it up on the internet. There's loads and loads of things you can do on it. I don't know if you've ever done one with your team.
Yeah.
But basically a team charter is, I always think of it as the Bill of Rights in America. We, the undersigned, agree. And you basically have discussions about how we communicate, what our values, team values, what company values, what drives me, what my hobbies. And it all goes down in a document. You have your individual one, you have your team one. A lot of agile teams put these together when they're starting an agile project because it helps them to bond better. But to give you an example, we did one in our L&D team, and we think, we're going to do maybe 2 hours on the whole thing. It took us 3 hours just to figure out communication, because we didn't realize how many different ways there were to communicate and how we preferred it. And it's just simple, practical elements of like that can really kind of bond a team together. And then you get chatting, and then you become more safe. Now, obviously, the manager has a big say in this because they need to let those voices be heard. They need to control it or manage it, maybe is a better way of putting it, to bring in these voices. But yeah,
how do you make sure, Toby, just on that, how do you make sure that doesn't become a kind of a top-down agenda, right? Like, as in your kind of leadership and management now deciding, this is how we're going to communicate. These are the team values, and I'm just putting it to you to hear your opinion, but this is what's been decided, rather than more of an empowered bottom-up approach where we feel like we've been a part of it.
If a manager if it was me, if a manager came down and said, "This is how we're going to communicate," then that's not a good manager, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
And then you, again, going back to that psychological safety, is that if you feel that you don't have the authority, the power, the allowed to question it and go, "I don't think that's right," then that's not a good situation. That's a toxic situation. There are obviously remedies. You can maybe talk to your peers. You've got external people you can talk to potentially. HR theoretically should be the people you go to say, "I don't feel comfortable talking about my my thoughts or my ideas in this team." And then there should be kind of a meeting where they talk to the manager and go, "This is the person's thoughts," and that kind of process. But it's one of those difficult things, because if a leadership is pushing it down, then there's maybe if I'm being kind of weird, you may be in the wrong company.
Yeah.
Because I honestly don't know. I can't think how you could rectify that, because it's then a philosophy of that company.
Right.
You can say what you think and go, "I don't think this is right." But if they go, "Well, okay, but this is the way we're doing it," yeah, I think the only thing you could do is demonstrate by using other examples. Look what this company's done, and they've got this safe environment. Bring in external speakers, not just experts, but people like CHROs and CEOs from other companies and say, look, this is what happened. And almost like what I'm doing here with you is kind of saying, well, what are your challenges? What barriers came up that you can overcome? And then it's hopefully them getting to see it. I don't feel that there's many companies that are really that strong these days. There maybe used to be. And I think it's that void. Because you don't feel like you can say anything, the managers then fill the voids of going, well, if nobody says anything, then this is the way it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So it needs to be both. The manager needs to, let me try and break it down. The manager needs to open up to say, this is the way I think it should be. But they need to be open and honest to go, I am not right. I'm not always right, should I say, or not right, one of the ways. And that you're fallible, and that you can say, well, if you don't agree, let me know. And if we think as a team, psychological safety and servant leadership usually go hand in hand. That as a team, if we think this way is better, not my way, then we'll go with that way.
Yeah.
And then you can then you then do that. Then the team goes, oh, hang on a minute. Managers said they're wrong, and they've gone with what we thought. Okay, maybe we should do this more often. And maybe then I can say something about this bit and that bit and that bit. And then it snowballs.
Yeah. And I guess that, again, is probably a mindset shift, right? It's not about who is right. It's about what is right, right? Exactly. And coming to that
take your ego out of it.
Yeah. And I think, the idea of kind of the best ideas should win. And how do you create a culture that does that? On the idea of kind of displaying your true self or showing your true self, it really reminds me of a recent conversation I had with a friend who got a new job, and he was asking me, is it okay to add your colleagues on Facebook? Is that allowed? You know, that line of, do you follow the people you work with on Instagram? Should I be adding my manager on Facebook? And you might think after a year of a pandemic that we're far beyond that. We've got a lot more insight into each other's lives, but it's still a thing, right? Because really, what you're asking, it's a manifestation of the idea of, do I really want to be showing them what I'm doing outside of work, right? This I've got a work persona, and do I want you to know anything else?
The whole, you're at the office, and you're at home. I mean, I live in the Netherlands. And typically the Dutch I'm born and bred Londoner, so I'm used to, like going out with your colleagues on a Friday night. For my bachelor party, most of my people were either current workmates or post workmates.
Right.
Whereas my wife, who's Dutch, she's like, I couldn't think of anything worse than bringing my colleagues to my bachelor night. And there is very stereotypically, at least, in Dutch, it's a very separated. You leave work at 5. That's it. I'm gone. You're great friends with that work, but weekends, I'm gone. Or Friday night, I'm out of here. And some things you just can't fight if you're in that culture. That's just the way things are. But little things, like I said, I'm not a big Facebook fan, but LinkedIn, 100% is to share your open up your profile, kind of connect with your manager, with your colleagues, kind of show them who you are. Because if you can't show them that, then how can you really succeed as a team? I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but seems like there is a connect there.
Yeah, and just on the true self, and this is probably getting a bit deep for the time of day, Toby, but we spoke about kind of showing your true self. How much do you think work or the organization can help you in discovering your true self?
Oh,
I went there, Toby.
If I'm being honest, they don't. I'm being truthfully honest. I think my very good friend, who's actually our next door neighbor, runs a company called Transcateers. So he's transgender, and he runs a company where they bring in exercises. And for example, he did a fascinating workshop with us where his opening, nobody knew him, and his opening 5 minutes was, how old do you think I am? What gender do you think I am? What sex do you think I am? What education do you think I am? Just based on looking at him.
Right.
And it was amazing, all the different kind of, you're straight, you're gay, you're this, you're that, you're 23, you're 33, all these kind of things.
Yeah.
And it's like, it just demonstrates that people have so many different ways of thinking about who an individual is. So if you're not open and honest yourself, so you've got to know yourself, you've got to be comfortable who you are. And the last thing I'd want is for anybody to kind of come out as gay to their colleagues when they're maybe not even comfortable talking about it in real life or something like that. It takes a lot of effort to be, come out as your true self, whether it's just your, I don't know, like I love playing the PlayStation. It's maybe not a true self, but yeah, it's little things like that. Yeah, it's the companies have a responsibility to set that safe foundation that feel that you can be your true self. They have that trusting environment, but I don't think it's their responsibility to help people be their true selves. It's just their responsibility to say, if you want to be your true self, this is a place that you can be. I don't know. I don't know if you disagree or not, but I'm not sure the role.
No, I guess I probably see it that many organizations ignore my dog going absolutely mental in the background. I don't know if you hear that, Toby, but do you think moving forward, given what we've just gone through with the pandemic, organizations will start to get that, we're talking about, I guess, the kind of work life, that line, it's got blurry now, right? And organizations playing such an active role in the mental well-being of people is a step in the right direction, step in the direction of that kind of personal and work boundary almost blending, right?
Yeah, like I said before, the kind of working from home bit has already blurred the lines to an extent. You can have your green screen on like this as much as you can, but even something like this I've chosen this background, so it gives you an eye into my background. Other people just have their I've seen people where they're sitting on the end of their bed, and I'm like, wow, okay, that's some kind of openness to do that. That's great. And I think I suppose the responsibility sounds a bit weird, but the responsibility of the company is to let go, is to not be controlling, is get rid of dress codes, get rid of how you're supposed to dress or how you're supposed to be able to behave, and what's the words, is push that more. So going back to K Point, I talked to the CEO quite a lot, and he says that one of the things he's doing is he's swapping the way that people work at his company. So you go home to work and you come to work to play. So he's basically redesigning a lot of the workspaces to be much more communal. Like in our company in Chicago, they have a happy hour. They actually bring in beer. I mean, how many times have we been told throughout our careers, can't drink, can't go to lunch, can't, all this kind of stuff. But they're actually bringing in beers and saying, it's 4 o'clock on a Friday, drink time. But it's little things like that companies can do. Rethink what it means to be a flexible remote worker. Because I think I would prefer people use the term flexible, not remote. Because remote sounds like I'm on my own, I'm isolated. Flexible means you can come in, you can go, but you need to think about what is your office world going to be like now, because it can't be the same as it was before. It just can't. Well, it can, but you're going backwards. So I think those are the kind of things that the office can do to kind of help people be more comfortable in the environment.
And just the last one before we go on to the quick fire round, and Toby, on kind of developing and nurturing the learning mindset, I guess, what can leaders and managers do today, right? It's clear an organization needs a learning mindset if they're going to be disruptive, innovative, and they're going to, not just survive, but thrive moving forward. But as a manager, as a leader, what can I be doing to nurture that mindset?
So I've always said that there's kind of a couple of practical, simple things that a leader or manager can do. Probably the most easiest thing is every single meeting, no matter what it is, take the first 5 minutes and ask the question, what did people learn today? What did people learn last week? What's the book you're reading? What's something interesting you want to share? Every single, and it's going back to that creating habits. Yeah. Every single meeting, and not the last 5 minutes, because it means you don't care about it. The first 5 minutes means that that's priority for you. What did you learn? What did you share? That kind of, kumbaya, everybody sings, hold hands, whatever you want to call it. But so that would be a simple practical test. The other things you can do is, I think we've talked about this before, about the bring learning into the flow of work, not just in time. So people talk about just in time training as being good. Yeah, it's good, but it's not the best, because just in time means, and I don't know why I'm telling you this because you kind of told this to me, is that you go away from your job, you take some training, and then you come back into your job. And you know the 70-20-10 approach, and people go, oh yeah, we've got to have that. No, for me, it's the wrong approach, because it shows that you're going 10% learning is over here, work is over here. If you separate the two, people will then not take learning as a priority. They'll do work rather than do learn. So if we can bring in that just in the flow of work, platforms like How Now, I'm going to plug you guys, can support that, in terms of the things that you guys do. I'm going to plug other companies like name forgets me. Damn it! Always the worst.
It's all right. You've forgotten them. It's fine.
Yeah, but like chatbots that can bring learning into your environment, that really support your learning. So it's the understanding that learning is important. Learning is essential to be able to push the company forward and push innovation, and those little practical elements. So individuals say, we want to hear, we want to share.
Yeah, I mean, look, we could do an entire episode just on 70-20-10. I mean, it's the idea of something that was, in essence, a guideline or a paradigm for thinking is now become quite prescriptive in the organization. And it's not the fault of the concept, but it's the fault of people who are trying to put that concept into practice in their organization. It's almost like, no, we've hit the 10. Now we need to move into the 20.
And now we've done the formal learning. Now we can do the social learning.
Exactly.
And now you can do the exercise.
And I think that the kind of intention behind it is almost being lost. But Toby, we're in the final part of the show. My favorite part. I'm going to fire quick fire questions at you, and you can keep them short answers. But if you want to elaborate, you're more than welcome to do it. So, what's one thing? Someone, a manager or a leader, someone in L&D who's listening to this, what's the one thing they can go away and do to improve learning at their company today?
God, dear. The one thing would be, I mean, I'm gonna push the rules. Let's say two. Sharing. Actively share yourself. What things because it has to start from you. So what you're doing yourself, what you've learned, why you learned it. And I think now let's just stick with that one. If you ask for one, I'm going to stick with one.
Yeah.
So as an individual, as a manager, not worrying about anybody else, you start sharing.
Yeah.
You start saying, I learned this, I like this because I think you might like it, or this company, or I saw this document, I liked it, and you start showing and let other people do them.
Yeah.
Like you do you.
You've given a TEDx talk, and what's your one tip for becoming a better or more engaging public speaker?
Or storytelling. I know everybody talks about it, but and for me, when I talk about storytelling, It's finding a personal connection to whatever story or whatever topic you're talking about. That's the thing that's going to hook you in and get people listening. My TED Talk, I based it around my daughter at the time of the TED Talk. She was like 6 months old, I think. So I used kind of her thinking about what would life be like, and I built that story out, and I used it as an example. And I think that personal hook to understand, I use analogies a lot. I love to use analogies to say, well, it's like, imagine if you were milking a cow, whatever it is kind of thing. It's using that personal connection of whatever you're trying to do and let that lead your conversation. And kind of go from there.
What's the one skill you would like to develop and why?
How to be a millionaire. One skill. I think if I'm thinking at this moment in time, I'd love to improve my animation skills, computer animation. So I do my own videos and all those kind of things, but I love maybe not V8 virtual kind of like being a movie star,
full on VFX.
VFX. My mind has gone blank. Not VFX, but just I'd love to start doing a bit better in animation.
Cool. And what's the one book you'd recommend to someone who's, I guess, maybe trying to develop a learning mindset or build a learning mindset within their organization, or more of a progressive learning culture?
So I'm going to go, I could talk about learning books, but if I'm being honest, I'm not a big academic person. You can probably tell. As you tell, I forget, names of theories and people and all that stuff. So
that's what you've got Google for, Toby. It's so last decade to remember names of books.
Exactly. You just Google it. But I would say that rather than go for a book that teaches you about a learning mindset, go for a book that's going to blow your mind. And for me, that one was Homo Deus by Harris, I think his name was. But he does 3 of them. He goes Sapiens, Homo Deus, and then 21 Lessons. They're kind of in order, but I don't know if you've ever read it. But
I've read Sapiens. Yeah, you all know Harari's book. Yeah. I've not read the other 2, but yeah.
It will absolutely blow your mind,
right,
in the best way possible. And to me, that then, if you start reading that book and you think, and it starts driving your mind and your curiosity, that is going to drive a learning mindset, rather than trying to read some book that tells you step 1, do this, step 2, do that. No.
Yeah, no, agreed.
And Simon Sinek's book, obviously, The Infinite Mindset, fascinating book.
What's the kind of, I guess, L&D or people development trend that you think we would really start to notice this year?
This year,
next year. Give it 4 months in.
For me, the 2 biggest areas that I'm fascinated about, and I think are going to be the next big things, is VR, AR, MR, so virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality, and chatbots. I think the leaps and bounds that VR is coming on, both from being able to be virtual meetings and do all the crazy stuff you can do in those things, virtual training, and things like eye tracking and all these kind of things that it can do to really kind of practice what you're preaching. And like we were saying before about bringing learning into your work, chatbots, I think, is going to be a real kind of big thing coming up.
I've got to say, with VRs, we for Christmas last year, we got our entire team Oculus headsets.
I've got myself an Oculus too.
Yeah, and just is incredible to kind of experience being in that rec room, or one of the kind of social where you can go,
the VR meeting and all that.
The VR meeting room. It is mind blowing. You realize how the exponential evolution of the kind of quality of graphics you would get in VR, it's very easy to kind of see how in the next decade, how people can
you see how far they've come already.
Themselves, right?
Yeah, I mean, you look at just from the Quest to the Quest 2, how much that you can do now is staggering. I actually, our little one is now 3, and she now uses it to go swimming with the fishes.
Amazing.
So she puts it on and kind of thing, and it's like all this, and it's just a different world. And I think I'm actively looking at how we can bring that into not just learning platforms, but how we can bring that into environments and be much more creative about it.
For sure. Last one for me, Toby, is what's the one thing you know now that you wish you knew at the start of your career in L&D?
It's not necessarily anything I know now, but I wish, maybe going back to the imposter syndrome bit, but I wish I had the passion then that I have now. I'm not saying it's too late kind of thing, because I'm old but not that old. But I wish that I'd kind of maybe got that imposter syndrome off my back a bit quicker, maybe put it that way.
Toby, thank you very much for sharing everything you've learned and kind of practicing what you preach. As always, it's been an enjoyable conversation. Thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure, sir. Have a good one.
And that brings us to the end of another episode of 99 Problems But Work Ain't One. You can find out how to connect with either Toby or myself in the episode description, where you will also find links to the episode's show notes. Alternatively, head over to gethownow.com/podcast, where you'll find everything you need to know about every episode of the show. If you enjoyed this episode, please do think about subscribing, sharing, leaving us a review, or telling a friend. It goes a long way in helping the show grow. Thanks, and see you next time.